Okay, so this is the audit committee meeting for the Town of Islip Industrial Development Agency and the Town of Islip Economic Development Corporation. The purpose of today's meeting is to go over our financial audit for both entities. And we have with us Brian Peterson from PKF O'Connor Davies, the auditing firm. Everyone say good morning to Brian.
Morning, Brian.
And he'll go over everything with us, and hopefully after we go through everything, we can certify the audit and I can enter them into my Paris report. So with that being said, I think what I'll do right now is hand it over to, actually, what we'll do is we're going to do them one at a time. So we'll do the Industrial Development Agency first, and then we'll have to convene the meeting for the IDA, and then we'll close that, and we'll do the same thing for the EDC, which will be quicker, but so we can do them both. John, you're the chairman of the committee, so I'm going to ask you to open the meeting.
Make a motion to start the meeting, and we have a quorum, so I need a second for.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, start the meeting.
Okay, so the Town of Islip Industrial Development Agency Audit Committee meeting is underway, and we have with us Brian Peterson from the auditing firm PKF O'Connor Davies, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Brian.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. So in your package that you received, we're going to start with the Auditors Communication with those charged in governance. You should see the Town of Islip IDA governance letter. So in that letter, so we have audited the financial statements of the Town of Islip Industrial Development Agency, the agency, as of and for the year ended December 31st, 2020, and have issued our report thereon dated May 25th, 2021, today's date. Professional standards require that we provide you with the information about the responsibilities underneath the auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. We have communicated such information in our engagement letter to you dated in December 30th, 2020. So our responsibility is to form and express an opinion about whether the financial statements, which are the responsibility of management, are presented fairly in all material respects in conformity with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So, your financial statements include, your significant accounting policies, which start as Note A on the financial statements. And there have been no initial selection of, or new accounting policies during the year, and no changes for accounting policies during the year for the IDA. Okay. The financial statement disclosures are consistent and clear. We encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management related to the performance of the audit. There are no such financial statement misstatements that remain uncorrected for the financial statements. So also, really, a good item there. We didn't have any really adjustments. We had no disagreements during the course of our audit with management. We requested certain written representation from management in a separate letter dated May 25th, 2021, of which, after you guys approve the financial statements, we'll get later on today, and we'll be able to finalize the issuance of the financial statements. Also, to the best of our knowledge, there was no consultations with other accountants regarding auditing and accounting matters. So that's a quick summary again of that communication to you as the audit committee. I'm going to move on to the audited financial statements for the Town of Islip IDA. So on the table of contents, you'll see the financial statements broken up into several different sections. So you got the independent auditors report, you got the required supplemental information, which just consists really of the management's discussion and analysis, the basic financial statements, which includes the statement of position, statement of revenues, expenses and changes in that position, the statement of cash flows, as well as the notes to the financial statements. And then we have our other supplemental information, which are schedule of bonds, notes, and leases, which is a required schedule for the Public Authorities Accountability Act for Paris filing. And then we have our other report, which is our report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance. So in our opinion, we have audited the accompanying financial statements of the business type activities of the Town of Islip IDA, a component of the Town of Islip, New York, as of and for the year ended December 31st, 2020. Our responsibility is to express an opinion on these financial statements based on our audit. On page 2 at the top, you'll see In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the business type activities of the agency as of December 31st, 2020. So a clean opinion. And you know, that really speaks volumes, right? With Joe in the controller's office and their hard work. We had no adjustments. We had no findings. You know, and again, a very clean opinion. We do have an emphasis of the matter paragraph in both the IDA and the EDC financial statements this particular year. And again, that just has to do with the fact that we're pointing out COVID, you know, the coronavirus pandemic. What type of impact would this potentially have on the agency, you know, and the corporation? And we're just pointing out the fact that, you know, currently, you know, the ultimate impact on the agency is unknown, you know. You know, okay, all right, so moving on, we're gonna go into page 5 at the bottom. So there you'll see the summary of the net position, okay? So we have our assets, our liabilities, and our total net position of the IDA. So the total assets as of December 31st, 2020 were just above $5.7 million, which exceeded total liabilities by of $4.6 million. So that's our total net position. Of the agency's net position, we got $10,000 that was invested in capital assets, and just over $4.6 million was unrestricted, which was available to support the IDA's operations. Total assets decreased by $339,000 between December 31st, 2020 and 2029, primarily due to the decrease in cash as compared to the prior year. And we'll go into the cash flow schedule later on, and you'll see why that decreased. Total liabilities decreased by just above $400,000, primarily due to the decrease in the amounts due to other governments. The amounts due to other governments, you know, from the year-to-year basis, primarily consist of pilot payments that was received at the end of the year in late December, and it's just a timing issue as far as when the IDA gets those funds to when they disperse them. So, and you'll see that in the cash flow analysis as well. So, but the total net position increased by just above $61,000. So I've done a couple of IDAs this particular year, and you know, you're one of the few IDAs that are actually still showing a profit for this particular year. Okay, so kudos to John and his team. You know, he really held the expenses, and you know, we're still able to do enough closings during the year to generate enough revenue to cover those expenses and still create a profit. So great job, John. Okay. And moving on page 6, you'll see a summary of our operating results. So you'll see our charges for services of $848,000 compared to the $1,010,000 in 2019. So we did have a decrease in our operating revenue of over $162,000. But we also had an increase in our expenses of $215,000 from $606,000 in 2019 to $822,000 in 2020. Even though we had the increase in the expenses and the decreases in revenue, we were still able to do a positive change in net position. The increase in our expenses, the decrease, I should say, in our revenue was related to just the size of the projects. We had lower projects. The size of the projects were lower compared to 2019, which ultimately resulted in lower closing fees for 2020 compared to 2019. The increase in the expenses, you know, was primarily due to the new COVID-19 assistance program, okay, that was established by the board and expended during the year. Out of the $250,000 that was allotted for this program, the agency had spent $247,000. Okay. Moving on page 8 gives you the more detail of the statement of net position. So you'll see you have cash of $5.7 million. You have there underneath liabilities due to other governments of the $1 million. Again, that's just 2021 pilot money that was just received at the end of 2020. So again, you have our unrestricted fund balance of $4.6 million. So in comparison, total net position is roughly 5.6 years of 2020 expenses. So pretty much what that means, obviously, if I take the total net position and I divide that into what your 2020 expenses were, that in essence, if you had no revenue, and your expenses stayed consistent, that you would still last 5.6 years with just the money that you have currently available. So very, very healthy, okay? Moving on page 9. Again, underneath operating expenses, you'll see that the COVID-19 assistance program is the new program that's there for over $247,000. So our total income from operations was around $25,000. We had our interest and investment income of $35,000, bringing a positive change in net position of $61,000. Okay. On page 10 is our cash flow, statement of cash flows. So you'll see underneath cash flows from operating activities, the net cash provided by operating activities was $57,000. Just underneath that is the pilot activity. So these are the ins and the outs just related to the pilot funds. So you'll see that we actually dispersed a little bit more in the pilot funds this year compared to, previous, as far as the money in and the money out. So, and that's ultimately what resulted in the decrease in the amounts due to other governments at the end of the year, because we were just able to disperse those funds more timely. So overall, we had a net decrease of $341,000, but again, our operating net cash was a positive $57,000, just related to our operations. Okay, I'm gonna move you back to page 14. At the bottom of page 14, we have our cash and our cash equivalents note. So at December 31st of 2020, the agency's cash and cash equivalents have been combined with other funds in the town's consolidated cash account, which was fully insured by FDIC or collateralized by securities held by the pledging banks in the town's name. Okay. Moving on to page 16, at the bottom, we have conduit debt. So the IDA obviously issues conduit debt through lease transactions and bond transactions. And then you'll see with at December 31st of 2020, there was one series of revenue bonds outstanding with an aggregated principal amount of $15.7 million. The bonds are not very common anymore. Most of the times, and you'll see on page 17, they're really doing a lot more lease transactions than the actual bonds themselves. So at December 31st of 2020, there were 144 leases outstanding at $1 or less per year. So these are the more common transactions that are really being done now by the IDAs. A little bit in the middle of page 17 is related party transactions. So the agency, as we all know, is a component unit of the town of Islip, and its personnel are employees of the town. All salaries and fringe benefits of the agency personnel are paid by the town. Additionally, the agency rents the office space from the town. The approximate total value of salary and fringe benefits attributable to the town employees as a percentage of the time on the agency's activities was $282,000, and an estimated fair market rental value of the office provided by the town was $12,000. So a total value of $294,331 is reported as administrative expenses on the financial statements. The agency reimbursed the town that total during 2020. In note J, you'll see a couple of upcoming pronouncements. The agency is still evaluating those new pronouncements to see if there's going to be any financial statement impact, and then, but we don't think it's going to be material. On page 18, again, we talk about the coronavirus. So right now, currently, management cannot reasonably estimate the actual impact on the agency's financial position at this time. So it really comes down to the applicants and the health of the applicants for them coming in and doing new bonds. We didn't see really an impact in 2020. John was able to close enough jobs, bonds, and leases, so we were able to, in essence, generate enough revenue to, support the operations. All right, so after that, we have our supplemental schedules, our bonds and notes and leases, and I'm going to bring it back to like the last 2 pages of the actual financial statements, which is our report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance. So our internal control over financial reporting, we consider the internal controls, just for the limited purpose, and it was not designed to identify all deficiencies in internal control that may be material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. But during our audit, I am happy to say that we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we consider to be material weakness that came to our attention. However, material weaknesses may exist that we have not identified. On page 33, the last page, you'll see the compliance and other matters. So the results of the test on compliance and other matters disclose no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported underneath governmental auditing standards. So again, another very clean report. Okay, and our last little item there is our compliance letter. And I think you'll see it referenced as Town of Islip IDA compliance letter. So in that letter, this is just a letter that's in essence required by the Public Authorities Accountability Act, again, for the filing for the power system. So in connection with our audit, nothing came to our attention that caused us to believe that the agency failed to comply with the agency's investment guidelines of the New York State Controller's Investment Guidelines and Section 2925 of the New York State Public Authorities Law. So again, no comments here, a very clean letter as well. So, I mean, that concludes, my presentation for the IDA. At this point, I ask the audit committee if they have any questions on the financial statements. Please feel free to ask.
No questions by me, Brian. Great job.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
question.
no questions.
With that, does anybody make a motion to approve the IDA audit?
Can I second?
You second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right,
Sorry.
approved.
Thank you, Brian.
No problem.
Yes,
I'm gonna make
thank
the
you.
motion to adjourn the IDA audit. We have a second.
Second.
Second, okay. IDA is adjourned. Up to you, Brian.
All right. So do you want to open up the EDC meeting?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to convene the EDC meeting.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're gonna open the meeting, Brian.
Okay. So since we already gone through a lot of the detail on the auditor's communication with those charged and governance, I'm just going to do a couple, again, highlights for the Economic Development Corp. Okay, so we again have audited the financial statements of the Town of Islip Economic Development Corporation as of and for the year ended December 31st, 2020. Nothing has, the financial statement disclosures are clear and concise. We did not encounter any difficulties in dealing with management during the audit. We had no misstatements that remained uncorrected. The audit did not identify any misstatements that were again not corrected by management. We have requested certain representation from management in a separate letter dated May 25th, 2020. And to the best of our knowledge, there were no consultations with other accountants regarding auditing or accounting matters. So, all right, so that completes that one. So the financial statements for the Economic Development Corporation, obviously we don't have the types of transactions that we have for the IDA, but still, this is a very important report that we need to kind of discuss because we haven't had a lot of activity in the EDC over the last couple of years, and management has taken the advice that it was given and really cut down costs to a bare minimum. Now, you guys are not alone. Obviously, there's a lot of EDCs and stuff like that that have significant fluctuations as far as their income. And it really all depends, in essence, on when they get that golden closing. And what I mean by that is like they'll just have one closing and it'll be enough funds to pretty much cover them for 5 years. And because there's just limited number of transactions, it's just a matter of gaining that one transaction that in essence is going to solidify you financially for the next couple of years. So you'll see that in these financial statements as well. So we have audited financial statements of the business type activities of the Town of Islip Economic Development Corp. I'm on page 1 of the audited financial statements. A component unit of the Town of Islip, New York, as of and for the year ended December 31st, 2020. Our responsibility as the auditors is to express our opinion on these financial statements based on our audit. On page 2, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly, in all material respect, the financial position of the business type activities of the corporation as of December 31st, 2020. Again, we have our emphasis of the matter paragraph related to the coronavirus pandemic that you'll see in note H. So again, a clean opinion on these financial statements. So moving forward to page 4. So we have our summary of our corporation's condensed statement of net position. So total assets as of December 31st, 2020 were $16,303, which comprised of cash and cash equivalents primarily. So the net position is unrestricted also in the amount of $16,603, which is available to support the corporation's operations. Total net position decreased by $5,047 in the current year. So on page 5, you'll see the summary results, condensed statement of revenues and expenses. So you see we had no operating revenue. We didn't have any in 2019 as well as 2020. We have our contractual goods and services. So there you'll see it actually dropped from $15,000 to $5,130 compared to 19 to 2020. And again, that primarily had to do with the discontinuance of a program support line that we have done in the past for a particular program that the EDC supported. And obviously with the financial condition of the EDC decreasing, management made the decision obviously not to support that program going forward because it would just continue to decrease the net position of the entity of the corporation.
So
So
we
you'll
used
see
to
there.
contribute $10,000 every year to the Islip Arts Council concert in the park. But because our funds are getting so low, we discontinued that.
Mhm. So a net position at the beginning of the year, as you can see, was at $20,650, and our net position at the end of the year was $16,603. So the total corporation's expenses again decreased, and as explained by John. So we are like you said, you did decrease the expenses, so you're definitely heading in essence the right direction. So moving forward, you're gonna see on page 7 again. We just have our cash and cash equivalents of the $16,000 and our unrestricted net position. On page 8, you see again just a summary. You'll see our statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position that pretty much show that we had a negative change in net position of the $5,000. So based off of this calculation, and if the expenses stay consistent, you'd have 3 years of enough net position to in essence support you for the next 3 years. Unfortunately, the professional fee, the only thing that's left in that right now is the audit fee. It kind of makes me feel bad about that, but unfortunately an audit still has to be done, so there's really nothing that John and I can do to reduce that any further. Okay.
You can't sharpen your pencil?
I can't. I've already reduced it as much as I could.
Well, on the other side too is I don't know if John told you, but we might have a big project coming up with Brentwood Legion Ambulance in the tune of $17 million bond. So
yes, that would be phenomenal. One of the other items that I wanted to discuss with the audit committee, and if you can share this with the board at the next meeting, as well as John, a lot of the EDCs have established an annual compliance fee. Okay, and that's something that I think you guys might want to consider actually establishing. It ranges anywhere from $500 to $1,500 depending on the actual size of the actual bonds, and really again you have that established already in the IDA, and again it's just to help support the annual compliance requirements and the reportings and other things like that. The EDC still has to comply, still has to file reports with the power system and things like that, not to the extent that the IDA has to, but it is something to consider, and that would generate annual income. John, you're on mute.
When we did that for the IDA, so yeah, we collect annual, administrative fee or whatever you want to call it, but we don't do it for all of our projects, only for the ones that were started after we instituted that policy, which was back in 2018 or whatever it was, 16.
Correct, because you can't go back and yeah. So what I'm saying is you have this project coming up. You might want to consider adopting that particular policy now.
Right.
So this project could in essence get grouped in and be required. I don't know if it goes by the application date. That's something you'll have to discuss with legal as far as like when does the policy take effect. If the application was in prior to the new policy date, then maybe they're not going to be subject to it. But it is something that should be considered long-term anyway, just to help support the annual operations of the EDC.
Understood.
All right, so moving forward, I'm going to bring it back to page 14 of the financial statements. There you'll see we have our conduit debt obligation, revenue bonds, and note transactions, note C. So you'll see at the bottom of note D, you'll see at the bottom of note D, as of December 31st of 2020, there were 3 series of revenue bonds outstanding with an aggregate principal balance payable of $15,118,000. All right. Again, related party transactions, we don't have any monetary transactions. This space for the EDC is in essence rent-free. And as far as new pronouncements, we have our leases and conduit debt obligations that their management is currently evaluating the impact of those upcoming pronouncements. But again, we don't anticipate them to be any significant. So note H, the coronavirus, you'll see the management cannot reasonably estimate the actual impact on the corporation's financial position at this time related to the coronavirus. Moving forward, the last 2 pages, you'll see again our report on independent control over financial reporting and on compliance. So again, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we consider to be material weaknesses for the Economic Development Corp. And as far as compliance and other matters, the results of our test disclose no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported underneath governmental auditing standards. So again, another clean opinion. So lastly, we have our compliance letter for our investment policy for the EDC. So in connection with our audit, nothing came to our attention that caused us to believe that the corporation failed to comply with the corporation's investment guidelines, the New York State Controller's Investment Guidelines, and Section 2925 of the New York State Public Authorities Law. So again, another clean opinion. So I want to thank John and his team and Joe and his office for their assistance in this audit. It was good. It was really good. We had a 60-day extension on the Paris filing this particular year. That was through an executive order. And so John is, we're going to get these financial statements over to John very quickly so he can finish the filing before the end of the month, which would be within that 60-day deadline. Okay. Are there any questions?
No, when, Brian, when did you merge firms?
January 1st, officially.
Okay.
Yeah, officially January 1st. It was published in September. And it's been a great experience.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I saw we also voted on, I think, one of your audits, I think, on the airport or something. So I was shocked with the name change. I was like, oh, it's all AZD. So, well, congratulations on the move. Any other questions for Brian?
No.
I
No
make a
questions.
motion to approve the Economic Development Corporation audit.
Second? Sorry.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to adjourn the Economic Development Audit meeting.
Second. I'll second that.
All in favor? All right. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No
Thank
Thank
problem.
you,
John.
everybody. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
everyone. Thank
All
you.
right. I miss meeting you guys in the conference room. We have to get back to normal.
Hopefully soon.
All right. Take care.
Till
Aye.
next year.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye now.
Great. Thank you.
Have a good Memorial Day.
You
Yeah,
too.
you too.
Brian, I'm going to maybe give you a quick call.
Yes, sure.
All right. Thanks.